because the blood flow does stop when you've been emotionally kicked in the gut. In other words, it's connected, and we all, as much as we are adults and have survived and we're here, have this small child within that is still susceptible to the ups and downs of everyday life, and it usually deposits right down here in our gut, right? So doing things like Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, breathing deeply and exhaling, being willing to feel what you're feeling is really important for gut health. It's not talked about very often, but whatever our emotion is, that is our baseline, we probably want to get it to be a little more peaceful. I'm always shocked by that. For me, I mean, I'll tune in and I'll go, whoa, I'm actually stressed right now. Because of that. No, I'm actually laying down and feeling still a little bit wired. Or this morning I woke up and it was so beautiful out and the breeze was coming in off the bay, and I thought, this is a wonderful, wonderful day. How am I not feeling that way every day, right? One of the things that's important to know is that we can choose to feel good. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer, like we have to seed our gut. But seeding our gut by thinking good thoughts and being positive is just as important as making sure we have the right microbiome going. If you're having problems with that, let me know and I'll tell you a great website to go to. So the next thing is leaky gut, leaky brain. We've kind of talked about it. We've talked about butyrate being a fix for that, fiber being a fix for that, but you have to have lactobacillus. You should have in your folders the GABA challenge. Do they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they do.
And for some of you, you've already done that because you're a relatively new patient. Just hold on to it. Do it later. I always like for people to check. And that's one way to check in and tune in. Is my gut barrier still up? I'll have to say that I checked mine back in April or May and was surprised to find that I needed a little more butyrate and to calm down a little bit. So
GABA Challenge is the paper that has a little envelope stapled to it, and it has 4 capsules of GABA in it.
So GABA is a happy camper neurotransmitter. It is the one that helps keep you asleep at night. And it's in a lot of sleep aids, over-the-counter sleep aids, even not over-the-counter sleep aids. GABA should not cross the gut barrier, and it should not cross the blood-brain barrier. You should be able to take 2,000 milligrams of GABA and feel nothing. It should just move right on through your gut. If you feel anything, you'll feel sleepy, you'll feel giddy. Sometimes people feel a little numbness around their mouth. But you shouldn't feel anything. If you feel something, then we know you have not only a leaky gut, but a leaky brain. And what's the way to fix that? I hope you all know that now. Butyrate, lots of fiber, lactobacillus, calming down, deep breathing, trying to get into your parasympathetic nervous system. So what happens if you have a leaky gut? Oh my gosh. All that literally shit is draining down into there's nothing more. It's literally like a city having the sewage system begin to crumble and it's leaking out into the streets. I have several patients who have elevated liver enzymes because of leaky gut. They've actually, at Johns Hopkins, localized fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver to leaky gut. Endometriosis, even in young girls, is related to leaky gut. In other words, the stuff is coming out, the body doesn't know what to do with it, it's trying to get rid of it, it puts it through its detoxification system, it still doesn't work, so it starts packing it away in different cells and in different parts of the organs to just keep it discreet as best it can. So leaky gut, leaky brain is something that you want to check every once in a while. The best times to check it are if you've been through some kind of stressful situation, or I recommend checking it every fall, because in the fall because of the circadian rhythm, because of light and because of the angle of the light, because of electromagnetism, our guts are more challenged in the fall. So save it if you don't need to use it right now. I have a couple of, I didn't put these in folders because we had so many, and if you want to read this, I'd love for you to read this. This is about aging, microglial priming, and the discordant central inflammatory process. I can feel it now. We're going to have more. Oh, sorry, we'll have to have more printed. If you have inflammation anywhere systemically, and you have a leaky blood-brain barrier, you will have what's called microglial priming of the brain cells. So in 1998, the Nobel Prize went to this guy, who I'm forgetting his name right now, but he had found that nerve cells actually grow. Up to that point, up to 1998, all of us have been taught that once you have a stroke, once you cut a nerve, it doesn't grow back. But his name's Evans. Dr. Evans found that indeed it does grow back. And especially if you use microcurrent to stimulate it and you put it in a nutrient-rich environment, it will grow faster. He did that with starfish, he did it with frogs, and then I don't know who the people were he started to do it with, but they definitely confirmed on MRI that you can grow brain. Right now, the way to measure in the US, the way to measure whether you have dementia or not is by brain volume. They're not doing it they're not doing it in Australia. I don't know what they're doing in Europe, but in the US, we're determining brain volume. So it's not uncommon for somebody after they're 50, I'm going to go after they're 70, no, after they're 60, to have a brain MRI, and the radiologist will say brain volume decreased per age. Like it's age normal brain volume. Well, quite frankly, I don't want my brain volume to go away. I want it to stay right where it is. And so one of the ways to keep it right where it is to avoid inflammation and inflammation in the gut. And I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Perlmutter, who is a functional medicine neurologist out of Florida, who has done a lot of work with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. And there are doctors now all over the place who are using similar protocols for building brain volume, which it all starts in the gut. So taking care of your gut is going to help to build brain volume by nourishing the nerves the way they should, but by protecting it from the inflammation that is systemic. And we can use COVID again here. COVID creates a cytokine storm. It's extremely inflammatory. The patients I know who have had it have all said it's like a bad flu times 10. And they just feel completely and utterly inflamed. And then when I've seen them afterwards, yeah, they look like they've been through a fryer. I mean, their tongues are very red. They've lost their barriers, essentially. That can happen with having the flu. It can happen, being in a car accident. It can happen with having brain trauma. Actually, some of the ways that we're treating brain trauma these days is first by taking care of the leakiness in the gut. So you know, after a concussion, within 72 hours, you lose your barriers in your gut and in your brain. So, if you have a concussion, what do you do first? Start eating fiber. Take your butyrate. Make sure that your gut's working right, because that's going to protect your brain as well. At any rate, I'm getting off subject here. The point is that keeping your brain healthy as you continue to age is vital. The most important thing to do is to keep your inflammation down, and one of the best ways to get inflammation down is making sure that your barriers are discrete. I think I've said it enough, right? But that paper is a paper that was recently published about inflammation, microglial priming. Unfortunately, it was sort of a downer when I learned about this, because it was so exciting to find out in 1998 that we could grow brain, right? But what happens is, yeah, we can grow nerves. Nerves will grow, but nerves go through a glial priming state if there's been an injury, whether it's chemical or mechanical, and they just never come back. So brain volume is important, but the most important thing is keeping your systemic inflammation down so that you do not prime your brain cells. I know that's a little esoteric, but there's a lot of information out there about that now, because it's new, and it's probably not going to filter down into mainstream for another 20 years. So you guys can write the book, set up the practice. The other funny thing about gut inflammation is that it causes obesity. Sometimes people say the obesity caused the gut problem, but the gut problem is what causes obesity. And it is about what you eat, and it is about how much you exercise. Exercise is particularly important for the intestines. But bifid bacteria, and that's one of the things that Dr. Mullen found, the 300-pound gastroenterologist who is now about 160, super skinny, is that bifid bacteria, if he optimized his bifid in his gut, he could pretty much eat whatever he wanted to. Now, I don't recommend eating whatever you want to. I don't recommend doing whatever you want to. But bifidobacterium is the lean bacteria. And optimizing bifidobacterium is very helpful in anybody who's struggling with obesity or struggling with losing weight. There's been a rash, and I think there's a rash in my practice, but I think just across the board, fatty liver is a big thing these days. And fatty liver comes about because of a lack of bifidobacterium, and he has all the research in that book if you need something to back you up. We've talked about SIBO already, but I just want to emphasize that SIBO would lead to fatty liver. And what does fatty liver lead to? More toxicity, because it's taking up real estate. The fat in the liver is taking up real estate. In the gut, if you have an infection, that infection is taking up real estate. There's a limited amount of how many bugs we can grow in our gut. And there's a limited amount of territory or real estate that the liver can have in the body. Liver regenerates, thank God. So if you have fatty liver, or you know people who have fatty liver, all you have to do is get them to start healing their gut, and the fatty liver will come back around. And here's step one. You have it. Again, open your own practice, but make sure it's 10 miles away. And then we've talked about fiber, we've talked about the slurry recipe. So we've talked a lot about what you can do without supplements, just with food and managing. But the next thing on the agenda is glyphosate. So glyphosate is Roundup. Roundup is an antibiotic. Before it was used as a weed killer, it was used as an antibiotic in humans. They found that people had adverse side effects, and so they found another use for it. All I'm going to say is stay away from it. Don't use it in your yard. Be sure you eat organic. And maybe once in your lifetime it would be a good idea to check to see what your glyphosate is. This is a urine test. I often, if people grew up on a farm or if people are farmers, I'll often have them have this checked if they're having problems, just to see what their body burden is. This is me. In 2016, it was relatively low. In 2017, while I was living on a golf course, it skyrocketed. I know my genetics, and I know I have a problem with detoxifying, so I'm not saying that's the way everybody would be if they lived on a golf course. I'm just saying it can happen to even the best of us who eat clean. One of the things to use as a diet plan for reestablishing a good microbiome is the FODMAP diet. And are you going to be sending that to people in their email? When you get the PowerPoint, you also get a FODMAP diet, which is essentially low carb. It's low carb, but it's specific carbs that are low. Like apples are not low. You do not eat apples on a FODMAP diet. I personally have never done the FODMAP diet. I've never had to do the FODMAP diet, but I've found that people who do the FODMAP diet feel better in about 2 weeks, and then we transition them off from it. So it's not something you stay on, it's something you pulse. This time of year, apples are, of course, in season, and not coincidentally, apples are often one of the best things to eat for developing a good short-chain fatty acid situation. So I just want you to know that you may have some conflicting information. It seems like conflicting. It's not. It's just at this time we do FODMAP, and then at this time we do apples. That it's always circulating depending on where your rheostat is in your diet. If you haven't ever done a low FODMAP diet, if you have bloating after meals, if you feel yucky, if you just feel yucky down here, a FODMAP diet for 2 weeks is a good idea. If all of that's working really good, this time of year is a great time of year for 2 weeks. I don't know why 2 weeks is the magic number, but it is. To make yourself some applesauce and eat it every evening before you go to bed for about 2 weeks. 2 apples, heat it up, blend it up. You want to have the skin on, but the core taken out. Apple pectin is a coveted thing. Apple pectin not only will create a good microbiome, but it will also detoxify your system. Back when the nuclear power plant went down in Japan, when was that? That was 2014, yeah. The year after I went to buy apple pectin, we still can't buy apple pectin. They bought it all up. They knew what would take care of radiation. If you are subject to radiation poisoning of any kind, apple pectin it is a great way to go. And this time of year is a great time to do it.
So skin off.
So yeah, you pour it. You have the recipe in there.
I just wrote skin off.
Yeah.
Once you blend it, you can't even tell it's there. Like I cut up the apples, steamed them, put them in my Vitamix.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead and put cinnamon on them. I mean, sweeten them out. I mean, it's really soothing to eat. It's a great little dessert.
So that's for radiation.
For all kinds of toxicity, but it works with radiation.
What about heavy metals like that?
Same thing.
Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. They're little sponges that just soak up whatever's not supposed to be there. And in particular, apple pectin and radiation are, but anything. We use a lot of chlorella, which we were having a hard time finding, and then we found it from Japan, and I hemmed and hawed and then decided to buy it because they grow it in these containers that are discrete from everything else. And the Japanese have a long history of taking care of their people. They know that indigenous food is helpful. That's what the whole macrobiotic movement was about. I don't think you have to be that stringent, but they have some great ideas for making sure people stay safe. So another way to stay safe, and another thing to pulse, and another thing to understand that you don't want to do all the time is stevia. Stevia is a sweetener that grows in a plant, and stevia is a great thing to use intermittently as a sweetener. If you have any kind of chronic infection, it's a good idea to use some stevia. I have one patient who every winter would get these multiple pneumonia. She'd wind up in the hospital, and then she'd take antibiotics, and we kept. You know what broke the cycle for her was taking stevia. Stevia kills biofilm. Biofilm is this slime that bacteria grow in. Any group of bacteria will create a biofilm, and it doesn't matter if they're good bacteria or if they're bad bacteria. They want to film and they want to hang out together. Stevia kills the film. So it kills the film indiscriminately. It can kill good microbiome film and it can kill bad microbiome film. But if you're having chronic infections, or if you feel like there's something in your gut that's just not right, don't hesitate to use some stevia in your hot drink in the morning, or to use some stevia on your whatever it is you're eating. But you only need a little bit. You do not want to always eat stevia though. And if you're always eating stevia, you will never optimize your microbiome because you're killing the biofilm that it's meant to grow on. This is another, I mean, the body is so interesting. It just gets more and more interesting no matter how much you learn about it. I'm sorry that you guys are cold. Do you want a blanket? We have them. Here's one right here. I'm almost done. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a geneticist, researcher. I don't know what else she is. Her name is Amy Yasko. She's now a practicing naturopath, but she's a double PhD, one from Harvard, one from Yale. She did a lot of work with genetics. She localized that one of the things the body does if it has heavy metals is it sequesters it away from the brain by creating strep cultures in the gut. So when we do stool analysis, if I see strep as a concomitant bacteria in the gut, I know that there's a heavy metal toxicity issue. We usually measure heavy metal in this office anyway with hair analysis, but if I see that strep repetitively, I know that there's some kind of heavy metal culture or amount that's being sequestered. And isn't that amazing that the body would do that? I mean, really, it's pretty amazing. So when people have heavy metals in their body, it's usually because it's been in their environment and it's overwhelmed their body's natural ability to not absorb it. And one of the most common ways is by a leaky gut. Another very common way is that they may have had something like a vaccine, their immune system got upregulated, there were too many cytokines, and their gut barrier went down and the mercury came in. And the other possibility is that they had too many amalgam fillings. And amalgam fillings, as they get older, throw off a vapor that just gradually leaks into the tissue. That's one option. The other one that we find a lot around here is people who love fish. And there is the EPA made a big deal back in the 80s, you should eat fish twice a week. And then they forgot to remind people when they started to measure the amount of mercury in fish, maybe not. Maybe you should only eat a few species more than once a week. But fish are a common place for us to have mercury, and it's only getting worse. So heavy metal toxicity in Virginia Beach is generally arsenic. We have arsenic in our drinking water. If you don't have filtered water that you're drinking, please do everything you can to get it. I've talked with the water people. We've tested it multiple homes, multiple times. And as long as any of those heavy metals that are naturally found in water stay below a certain amount on an average, it's okay. But it can spike. And I've had multiple children who've had arsenic. That has been a health issue for them. Probably they were eating too much sugar too. Probably their gut barrier was down. Yeah, probably. But anyway, in other words, I don't want you to go out of here being afraid. But we do, just be aware that I don't know what Norfolk has. I just know Virginia Beach. So one of the ways to determine what your microbiome looks like is to have a stool analysis. And I'm a big proponent of that. If you haven't had one, I recommend it. If you've had one, I recommend it. I do one probably every 3 years at this point just to see what's going on. I'll never forget the first time I did one, which was about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and went, what? Huh? And I changed based on, I had an infection, I didn't have some of the good stuff, and I just shifted things around, killed the stuff that wasn't supposed to be there, and my energy level came right back up. And I was young then, I was 35, something like that. Anyway, that made a big difference for me, and I have seen it over and over and over again. There's no way that you can tell what's going on in somebody's gut without doing the analysis. I think that testing is important. And I think testing is important, particularly in the gut, because it is the foundation of everything else. I don't think colonoscopies are as important as stool analysis. What are colonoscopies? They're going up there and they're looking at the tissue, you know, and they're making sure that the tissue looks okay. But of course, you're completely cleaned out. I'm not saying don't have a colonoscopy. I'm just saying you get so much more information. It's so much more preventative than having a colonoscopy. I would always err on the side of doing a stool analysis first. You have, and you can look at this later, but you have sort of a printout of what a stool analysis looks like from Doctor's Data. I use Doctor's Data. There's another lab called Genova. It tests and grows your microbiome, and then anything that's not supposed to be there, they will see what kills it, whether it's prescriptive or non-prescriptive agents. And then I have to say that once you've gotten things settled down, i.e. you've done 2 weeks of low-carb FODMAP diet, your tummy's not grumbling, you feel good down here, then some of the foods that you really want to eat are called superfoods, and they're all listed down here. And if you're not eating them regularly, I would highly recommend figuring out how to make that happen. Now, Neighborhood Harvest. One of the things I love about Neighborhood Harvest is they have basil in big containers. Basil is a superfood. If you can grow basil anywhere. I mean, basil will grow in pots on a balcony. Basil is super green, and if you look at the little leaves, you'll always see a line of white, which is their bacteria growing on them. So I think of basil as a superfood because it's super green, and it's an easy one to grow, and it's helpful in so many ways for creating a good microbiome. Basil is also renowned for creating good adrenal function and balancing out hormones. Some of the other superfoods here are artichokes, miso soup. Miso, a Japanese fermented, it's sometimes wheat, it's sometimes soy, but making miso soup, not so much eating miso soup in the restaurant because usually they've overheated it, but making miso soup by putting the miso in after you've made the soup, and you're serving it, and you put the miso in the bowl, and then you put hot soup in, will maintain the bacteria, and that's a great food to eat to create good microbiome. Cinnamon, garlic, those are all foods that have phytonutrients that support bacterial growth, good bacterial growth. And then, apples are on there too. This is where the people in Virginia Beach start to hate me when I say limit alcohol. My brothers and sisters have informed me that it's not just for Virginia Beach, it's everywhere. But I personally can't drink much. I can have a cider every once in a while. I don't do well with alcohol, and I never have. But alcohol is one of those things that you want to do in moderation. And one of the things that I hear a lot of is, well, they say you can do 2 glasses of red wine a night. No, you can't. Or you can, but you're going to pay for it. It's not only the alcohol in it, but it's also all of the other things that go into making wine. It's actually probably better, because what do you get from red wine? The resveratrol. It's probably better to drink grape juice than it is to drink the wine. Although they have found that using small amounts of alcohol regularly in your life is helpful for a lot of people. So all I'm going to say is too much is never good for anybody, but everybody has their own level of tolerance and their own level of ability to get something out of alcoholic drinks. So when people tell me, they have a martini, 2 martinis every night, I try to get them to start drinking red wine, and then try to, stop 2, then let's just do it 3 times a week, then let's just do it twice a week.
And it's the American version, the big balloon goblets. So the French
Yes.
have 2 fingerfuls in a juice glass, like that's their portion.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in this group has this problem, but it's interesting to me how much younger people drink, and the people who come in, and so the younger people who come in with problems, serious problems, and they say it started after I was on a binge in college. They had a drinking binge in college, and from that point on their skin was never the same. Or they had a drinking and drugging binge in college, and from that point on their anxiety became so bad, and then there's the sequelae of other things that happen. But what happens with alcohol, besides liver toxicity, which everybody seems to know about, but for sure, alcohol kills the blood-brain barrier. And until you get the barriers up, and one of the people that I had in the last 6 months whose barrier we could not get up was a young man who had 2